Hi, this is Professor Favors with American Literature. So today's lesson is on Walt Whitman's Song of Myself, and we are only going to look at stanzas 1 to 20. So make sure to have your document out. You can access it online. The Song of Myself, if you type it in as a research target, you should find a PDF. For my class, however, you do have access to a link. So this is American Literature, Walt Whitman's Song of Myself, stanzas 1 to 20. So this lesson is subject to fair use because I am including the 20 stanzas within this presentation, but it is for teaching purposes. So um, there are also pics, two pics of Walt Whitman as well. So this is subject to fair use. All right, so let's look at Walt Whitman. His date ranges 1819 to 1892. And so here's a picture of him. And I'm just going to read this slide and the next slide. The second of 9 children and born in 1819 to a Long Island farmer and carpenter, Walt Whitman is both the journeyman poet of Americanness and its champion. A journalist and newspaper editor throughout his life, Whitman worked as a law clerk, a school teacher, a printer, a civil servant, and a hospital aide, but he was always writing. From his teenage years until his death, his byline was on constant view. Contemporary reports suggest that Whitman was an industrious worker, but that he was often accused of idleness because his habit of long midday walks contrasted sharply with 19th century attitudes toward work. In Song of Myself, Whitman addressed these critics directly by writing, I loaf and invite my soul. I lean and loaf at my ease, observing a spear of summer grass. So the purpose of us only looking at 1 through 20, even though 21 through 52 might have the answer that we need. The only reason why we want to look at only 1 through 20 for Song of Myself is this idea here where Whitman is addressing his critics. He is being accused of idleness. He's being accused of idleness. Song of Myself is him addressing the critics. They're saying in a time of change, in a time of industry, in a time of work is important to us. 19th century attitudes towards work. He is being idle. So then the 52 stanza Song of Myself is his response to the critics. And that's why we're only going to look at 1 through 20 because 1 through 20 really gives us what we need. Okay. So when you are reading the 20 stanzas, Song of Myself, understand that everything that he is saying, line by line, stanza by stanza, is in a response to the critics who say he's idle within the context of 19th century attitudes toward work. All right, so for Whitman, too much industry dulled the ability to celebrate the ordinary. In the preface to the first edition of Leaves of Grass in 1855, Whitman expounds on his love for the common. Other states indicate themselves in their deputies, but the genius of the United States is not best or most in its executives or legislators, nor in its ambassadors or authors or colleges or churches or parlors, nor even in its newspapers or inventors, but always most in the common people. Whitman's love for the common people that he encountered and observed in the urban centers of the North is expressed in all his poetry. If his British contemporary Alfred Lord Tennyson is the national poet of mourning, then Whitman is the national poet of celebration. So, what you see here with Whitman, too much industry, too much industry dulled the ability to celebrate the ordinary. Every day there is a ordinary experience. And what he's suggesting here that all of these people who are about industry, and call it genius, right? So these are the folks who are business executives. These are the folks who are state, federal legislators. These are some of the people who are ambassadors, authors, colleges, churches, parlors, even newspapers or inventors. These are the people who are so busy with industry, and there's nothing wrong with industry in a sense that you still need to put your hands to work. But he was saying that people spent too much time in industry to the point that they missed the commonness of people, everyday ordinary living. And so again, Song of Myself is a response to the critics that you are spending too much time in industry. You're not celebrating the ordinary. You're calling yourself genius because of all these different categories, right? It's like a person listing all of their accomplishments on their resume. You do this, you do this, you do this, but there's some aspect of your life that you are missing out on. And that's what he wants to call attention to. All right, so let's look at some historical implications. Remember from the introductory PowerPoint lesson to the course um, on time periods, that every time you see something in terms of a time period 1819 to 1892, his his birth and death dates, and that's the 19th century. You want to look at what was going on during that time. Now, there's a lot more that's going on. I just only put here the most necessary, but let's look at it. So, 1819, we have the Panic of 1819, which is a financial crisis. Somewhere between here, we also had another financial crisis, somewhere like 1837. Thomas Jefferson founds the University of Virginia. So then we have different states becoming states, or different territories becoming states. So Maine and Missouri becoming a state. Florida becomes a U.S. territory. We also have Thomas Jefferson and John Adams, the presidents, dying on the same day, and then Andrew Jackson becoming president. We have Nat Turner's revolt, also slavery debates. We have Oberlin College beginning enrolling female students. This is a change in the dynamic of all men being able to go to college, right? And many of the institutions having to create uh, separate institutions for women, separate institutions for Black Americans. And so you're going to see this again in your final paper for this course on single sex colleges. And the title of that is Are Single Sex Colleges Obsolete? And so then 1845, we have Florida and Texas becoming states. Then we have the Mexican American War. What is interesting here is 1857 is kind of like a current issue that's going on today. But this was Dred Scott v. Sanford, and he sued based on the idea that he was free from slavery. And so slaves and blacks, um, the conclusion of the suit, the judge's decision, slaves and blacks descended from slaves were not American citizens and cannot sue. So then later we ended up having Emancipation Proclamation, which freed the slaves, Reconstruction era, assassination of President Abraham Lincoln. Then the 13th Amendment abolished slavery. The 14th Amendment granted citizenship and equal protection under the law, meaning that we're not necessarily equal. It's a citizenship amendment, but it basically means that it's equal application of the law. So if men can go to college, women can go to college. If white people can go to college, black people can go to college. So it's equal application of the law. So now this is the industry aspect of um, Whitman's critique. 1865 to 1913, these were two major industrial revolutions. Then there was a global transition towards manufacturing, technological improvements, rapid economic growth in these areas here. So during the 19th century, where there's a heavy attitude towards work and industry, within this context here of the 19th century, we have critics who are criticizing Walt Whitman that he's not industrious enough. And so keep this in mind as we go through all the different slides. So we're looking at the immediate text. Whenever you want to look at a literary work, you look at the immediate text. You don't go and find um, secondary source material to try to understand the text itself. You want to take some time to learn how to look at the text yourself, and that's what we're going to do. All right, let's look at stanza 6, the owner. All right, stanza 6 has about 2 slides. A child said, "What is the grass?" fetching it to me with full hands. How could I answer the child? I do not know what it is any more than he. I guess it must be the flag of my disposition out of hopeful green stuffs woven. Or I guess it is the handkerchief of the Lord, a scented gift and remembrance, sir, designedly dropped, bearing the owner's name some way in the corners, that we may see and remark and say, whose? Or I guess the grass is itself a child, the produced babe of the vegetation. Or I guess it is a uniform hieroglyphic, and it means sprouting alike in broad zones and narrow zones, growing among black folks as among white. Kanak, Takahu, Takaho, Congressman, Cuff, I give them the same. I receive them the same. And now it seems to me the beautiful uncut hair of graves. Tenderly will I use you curling grass. It may be you transpire. It may be you transpire from the breasts of young men. It may be if I had known them, I would have loved them. It may be you are from old people or from offspring taken soon out of their mother's laps. So we're looking at the sort of like the owner of the grass. Who owns the grass? Okay. A child presents a both a rhetorical question as well as a question that he wants answered, because then it's he fetches it and gives it to the poet with full hands. What is the grass is rhetorical in the sense that it has implications of literary criticism, right? Who owns this literary work? Who owns this literary criticism of the work? The talkers and the critics who are criticizing Whitman, they are coming from all different types of sides, and that's why he tells you you need to listen to all sides. uh, but it's a rhetorical question, and it's a question that also deserves to be answered. What is the grass? And it is the child fetching it to the poet with full hands because he wants an answer. But then he has, but here is a dilemma. How could I answer the child? I do not know what it is any more than he is. So I don't know what the grass actually is. I'm not necessarily made from grass. I'm not composed of grass, so I don't know what grass is. My body composition is, I guess, chemical, right? So so the grass is more organic, I think. And so how could I answer the child? I do not know what it is any more than he. I guess it must be, so now he's going to define the grass. I guess it must be the flag of my disposition. So we understand what a flag is, right? But it is also a piece of cloth. Disposition means a person's inherent qualities of mind and character. So this might be the flag of my inherent quality and mind of character, right? Mind or character. Or out of hopeful green stuff woven. Or I guess it must be the handkerchief of the Lord. The grass must be the handkerchief. We know what a handkerchief is, a piece of cloth. Okay. It could be a scented gift, a remembrancer designedly dropped, right? It bearing the owner's name some way in the corners that we may see and remark and say, whose? To whom does the grass belong? Who is it, right? Or I guess the grass itself is a child, the produced babe of the vegetation. So the vegetation produces a child, right? Not a literal child, but an offspring in a way. Or I guess it is a uniform hieroglyphic, and it means sprouting alike in broad zones and narrow zones. But if you stick, if you look at the presentation of a rhetorical question and then trying to answer it in different ways, possibilities, now you're looking at the equality of the grass or the how much all of us have been exposed to the grass, right? The grass could be figurative as well as in terms of thinking. So it grows among black folks as among white. That goes to the equality of it. Everyone has access to the grass. You then there's a geography of it. You can see the grass in Connaught. You can see the grass in Tuckahoe. The congressman knows about the grass. The cuff, I give them the same. I receive the same. And now it seems to me the beautiful uncut hair of grays. So you will see grass and grays. Okay. And if no one cuts the grass, then it's going to grow on top of the grass. Generally, will I use curling grass? It may be you transpire from the breasts of young men. It may be if I had known what I would have loved them. It may be you are from old people or from offspring taken out of the mother's laps. So the grass, we have the presentation of a rhetorical question that also needs to be answered, and the poet is giving you possible possible definitions of how to interpret grass as useful. But then we also have the equality argument where uh, the grass is available to everybody, black and white alike. Geographically, it's available. It's in grays. So grass um, in this sense could be opportunity, it could be understanding, it could be trying to get a better understanding of idleness, meaning that grass could be the criticism, but grass could also mean that in the same way that I loaf around and I aimlessly wander, you have that opportunity too. If you want to walk among the grass and live among the grass and receive it and accept it and embrace it and actually enjoy it, you can do that too. So why is it that you have to question me about why I want to loaf around and be idle when you can have that option as well? All right, this is the last of stanza 6. So and here you are, the mother's laps. This grass is very dark to be from the white heads of old mothers, darker than the colorless beards of old men, dark to come from under the faint red roofs of mouths. Or I perceive after all so many uttering tongues, and I perceive that they do not come from the roofs of mouths for nothing. I wish I could translate the hints about the dead young men and women, and the hints about old men and mothers and the offspring taken soon out of their laps. What do you think has become of the young and old men? And what do you think has become of the women and children? They are alive and well somewhere. The smallest sprout shows there is really no death. And if ever there was, it led forward life and does not wait at the end to arrest it, and cease the moment life appeared. All goes onward and outward, nothing collapses. And to die is different from what one supposed and luckier. So I think the line, the smallest sprout shows there is really no death. So even if you think about mowing your lawn, right? or you are uprooting a weed or something like that, that weed is still going to come up, or that grass you can mow and mow and mow and get it down to the dirt, and somewhere um, just a little bit of a sprout can show up, meaning that there really is no death. Stanza 6, uh, which which really suggests hope, and it suggests both hope and uncertainty. There's also something I want to call attention to. The I want to call it to. Do I still have it here? Where does this end here? Okay, or the mother's laps. The grass is very dark. Where is it? The grass is very dark. Dark to be from the white heads of old mothers. Dark is the absence of light. Dark is the absence of light. Light refers oftentimes to wisdom and insight. So then the white heads of old mothers, usually they carry a lot of insight. But the grass is very dark to be from the, so it's not coming from them. So if we're getting a lot of criticism, it's not coming from the wisdom holders. It's not coming from people who understand the light of things, the understand the importance, the substance of things. So the grass is very dark. It's coming from a place where there is an absence of light, meaning the critics are criticizing, but they're not criticizing with insight. And if we listen to the white heads of old mothers, we will get more insight on the matter, on why it is important to enjoy the common, why sometimes it is important to be idle, why sometimes it is important to be to rest. As much as you want to improve and be revolutionary, it's going to produce a dark insight in you, because you are spending so much time revolutionizing, but you're not spending any time resting. And the white heads of old mothers will tell you that you need to rest, because at the end of the day, there is really no death. The smallest sprout shows that there really is no death. So you're working yourself to the bone, um, almost to death, when things are still going to continue on. All goes onward and outward, nothing really collapses. So you might as well take it season by season, step by step. You don't have to die um, just to get it done. Okay. All right, so here's some resources, research archives, and educational information. So Walt Whitman Birthplace Association website, then research archives list of links you can find on that website. Some are good links and some are not. So I added a Walt Whitman archive link here, and then of course the source pit. All right. Thank you very much for listening.